Good morning. You're welcome to another edition of Import Export Helpline. Facebook Live brought to you by Trade Import Trade Academy. My name is Dele Ayemiba. We'll continue our discussion this morning on understanding the export business documentation. I'll be looking at part 4. Huaga Omokudu, thank you very much for joining. Good morning and welcome. So we'll continue from where we stopped. So this morning we'll be looking at export documentation, export guideline. Remember, trade business is a business of documentation. So even when government give guideline on trade, it's all around document. It's always all around document. It's always all around document. Olawu Samuel Ladayo, thank you very much for joining. Good morning. We are coming early this morning because of the fact that I'll be engaged from 8. So instead of not being able to have the morning session at all or having it very late, so we decided to come in early. So those that are coming in by 8 or joining us by 8 will probably be able to get the video on my timeline afterwards. So sorry that we're coming late, even though it's supposed to be 8, but I'm coming in 7:20, about 40 minutes ahead of the scheduled time. All goods, both oil and non-oil and its derivative, exported from Nigeria shall be subject to inspection by inspection agent appointed for that purpose by the government. And that's the first statement on the export guideline in Nigeria. So if I'm exporting anything out of Nigeria, it must be exported, so it must be inspected rather by inspection agent. These are called PIAs, pre-shipment inspection agent by government. They are paid by the government of Nigeria. They are paid by the exporter actually through the government of Nigeria to inspect good living. You know, when you're exporting, you pay a fee. The fee is called the Nigerian Export Supervision Scheme fee. And it's 0.5% of the value of the goods. That's the FOB value of the goods. And that fee you pay is from there that the inspection agents are usually paid. So inspection agents are paid from that fee you pay. That's 0.5% of the FOB value. CBN from there will pay these people from time to time based on the number of inspection or item inspected in Nigeria. Alright, so any item you're exporting from Nigeria must be subject to inspection by the inspection agent for that purpose by the government. These inspection agents are 3. I mentioned them yesterday when I was discussing the step-by-step export process. I mentioned Kamai ASEA that covers the northeast, northwest, and north central. I mentioned Neroli Technology that covers the southeast and south. And I mentioned Cobalt that covers southwest. So before my good leave, I'll contact them, I'll discuss with them, I'll talk to them about the item I want to export, and on the strength of the discussion I have with them on the item I want to export, then they will come and inspect, take pictures, take samples, and issue their report. Now the report they will give me is called the Clean Certificate of Inspection. That certificate is not recognized anywhere outside Nigeria. It's just for the purpose of the government locally. It's recognized by other government agencies because it's going to be the basis for giving you any incentive from government. But it's not recognized anywhere outside Nigeria. Number 2, all export exempt from inspection by inspection agents are listed on Schedule A. I will read out the schedule. Now, items exempted from inspection in Nigeria are not necessarily prohibited. A prohibited item is automatically exempted from inspection. An exempted item is not necessarily prohibited. So the fact that an item is exempted from inspection does not mean it's prohibited for export. But the fact that an item is prohibited for export means it will not be inspected. It's exempted from inspection. I don't know if that is clear. Miki Ogbaisi, thank you very much for joining. Good morning. The fact that a customer is exporting a product and that product is prohibited does not mean that product, and that product is exempted from inspection does not mean that product is prohibited. So, for example, you can export human parts for surgeries. If the human part is exported, it is exempted from inspection, but it is not prohibited for export. But if I'm exporting corn is prohibited for export and automatically exempted from inspection. They will inspect it because it's prohibited for export. An item prohibited for export is also exempted from inspection. An item exempted from inspection is not necessarily prohibited for export. Here are the items exempted from inspection in Nigeria. Not prohibited now, exempted. Fastener effect, used motor vehicles, perishables, human parts, human remains, periodicals or magazine, object of arts, explosives, pyrotechnic products, arms and ammunition, live animals, transshipment, live animals, transshipment, supply to diplomatic corps, household and other non-commercial products, gift and personal effect. These are all items exempted from inspection. Exempted from inspection. Silas Irabo, thank you very much for joining. Good morning. Inchedo Anino, thank you very much for joining. Good morning. You're welcome. All right, so let's move on to number 3. For the avoidance of doubt, goods prohibited for exportation from Nigeria are contained in the annual fiscal policy guideline and shall not be processed by inspection agent. So items that is on that schedule are prohibited for export. For the reason of doubt, goods prohibited for exportation from Nigeria will not be processed by an inspection agent, and it will be determined by the fiscal policy guideline of government. So if you want to know the list of items prohibited for inspection, you can check the custom website. You will see the item prohibited for inspection, and it includes corn. It includes unprocessed rubber latex and rubber lump. It includes scrap metals. It includes artifacts and antiquities. It includes animals classified as endangered species like lizard and lion. And lastly, it includes all imported items are also prohibited for export in Nigeria. So any other thing that is prohibited is going to be based on the fiscal guideline issued by the government. Adolphus Ali, thank you very much for joining. Good morning. The inspection agent shall inspect the quality and quantity of the export as well as the true value of the goods to consignee and shall issue a clean certificate of inspection of the goods. However, where there are written complaint or protest has been lodged by the consignee or his agent in oil and gas transaction, the relevant CCI shall be issued in a maximum of 30 calendar days. 30 calendar days rather. So any CCI must be issued within 72 hours. But we've had cases where they were issued after over a week. But sometimes it's just an abnormal situation. 72 hours issuance of CCI. In number 5, it says, In the event of uncovering discrepancies that cannot be corrected immediately, the exporter shall be issued with non-negotiable certificate of inspection. It is, however, in the interest and integrity of the exporter to correct the discrepancy, to enable the inspection agent issue appropriate certificate and endorse the commercial invoice. So the challenge here is this. Remember, this agency of government, they make their money from what you declare that you are exporting, the value. So, if what you quoted is lower, they can raise a discrepancy and then demand for payment of extra charge or extra fee if what you claim is lower. When that happens, sorry, I have breaking transmission. When that happens, they will issue a non-negotiable certificate of inspection and expecting you to correct that anomaly. Typically, what they've done for me in the past is, sometimes you have this argument with this agency because they want to make more money. They just uplift some of these things. We had the price that we agree with the buyer, and they said no, they are not going to accept that price. The price of the product is this high, and they give us, they call it debit note, and we have to go and pay extra. And it's after we have paid that extra that they issue the certificate of inspection, which is part of document to be used for used for post-export documentation, evidence that you have legally cleared the goods. Then number 6, exporter shall open a domiciliary account with any bank in Nigeria, and this same bank shall issue the exporter with Nigeria Export Proceed Form. Remember, we are discussing export documentation, and we are now looking at the guideline of export in Nigeria. And the regulation says that for you to export in Nigeria, you need to open an NXP. You pick it up from your bank. That NXP is in centuplicate, so it has 6 carbonated copies. When you remove the one on top, normally the bank will remove that one, and the other will be sent to the different agency of government, from inspection agent to custom to inspection agent, custom, NEPC, Ministry of Finance, and Central Bank of Nigeria. They all have a copy of it, because if you are going to claim anything in future, a number of them will pass through these people, and they want to see a copy of the NXP you process. So with that NXP that you have processed, you have a copy with the bank, and the other copy with this agency. So when you get the custom will stamp the one you have and give it back to you, and that's supposed to be brought back to the bank as evidence you have legally cleared the good for export. The exporter shall open a DOM account with any bank in Nigeria, and that DOM account is called the Export Proceed DOM account. Export Proceed DOM account is a statutory requirement for export. Just the way you have NXP, you're also supposed to have Export Proceed DOM account. Because when you are going to get your document, when you are going to get your payment from abroad, you will need this domiciliary account. And you must be able to report, the bank should be able to report to CBN that this is an export proceed. They will only be able to defend that and record that this is an export proceed if money come into an export DOM account, not a regular DOM account. So exporter shall open a DOM account with any bank, and this shall be the same shall be issued with the Nigerian Export Proceed Form in supplicate for completion in respect of the export transaction. The exporter shall ensure that the export proceeds are credited into this account. Number 7. Having collected a set of NSP form from his or her bank, the exporter complete the form in certificate and return same to the bank with a contract of sale or pro forma invoice. The bank register and endorse the same and retain the original copy, and the remaining 5 copies shall be forwarded to the inspection, like I said earlier. So when you open the NSP, you also open the Naira account. Having collected the NXP form from the bank, you fill it, you attach the relevant document. From what we discussed yesterday, you attach pro forma invoice, certificate of incorporation, export license, and any relevant permit, and then give it to the bank for processing. Exporter shall retain copy of the NXP form and use the NSP number as reference in all his dealings with central bank, custom, and other agency of government. Remember, like I said earlier, this document, the bank will retain original, but you should have a copy as an exporter. Because when you're going to do anything at the port, you must attach a copy of that document. But if you can't copy, you are exporting is the one that the bank gives you and already stamp and put their details. That's the reference numbers and then stamped. That document is what you're going to use to process your export clearance through your agent at the port. So you should have a copy of the document. The NXP form shall be utilized within 6 months. When you process an NXP, it must be utilized in 6 months. When you process an NSP, it must be utilized in 6 months. Why? That is the validity of the NXP. The NSP, when issued in Nigeria, is valid for 6 months. But you can also renew it at the end of 3 months through the bank. And any further renewal, we have to go through the Central Bank of Nigeria. Raf Abiodun, thank you very much for joining. Good morning. Enoch Ejukolem, thank you very much for joining. Good morning. Khadija Aziz, thank you very much for joining. Good morning. So NSP is, for those that are familiar with import, for them is valid for 1 year for smaller, for regular merchandise is valid for 360 days, and capital goods is valid for 720 days. So 1 year, 2 years. That's for FOMEM. Sorry, FOMEM used to be 6 months, just like NXP, but now it's 1 year, and you can renew it for another 6 months. But for still on NXP, no change, no change. There has not been any change to the validity. So it's valid for 6 months. After 6 months, you can revalidate it for another 3 months, and if you need further extension, then you go to CBN. The exporter shall require to pay a designated bank fee, a designated bank, the Nigerian Export Supervision Scheme fee. Now, like I said earlier, that every export is inspected by an inspection agent of government, on behalf of federal government, and they are being paid. This is what they are using to pay them. The Nigeria Export Supervision Scheme fee. The Nigeria Export Supervision Scheme fee. The exporter shall be required to pay a designated bank the Nigeria Export Supervision Scheme fee. This is 0.5% of the FOB value. The designated bank shall remit this to the account of NEST with CBN. And CBN will remit to the federal government. If after inspection the FOB value is found to be higher than the declared value, the next fee shall be paid by the exporter. So the additional next fee shall be paid by the exporter according, like I was saying the other time, that if it so happens that the agent feel what you have declared is lower, they can ask for additional payment through a debit note, and you need to pay that before they issue the CCI. Remember, that's where their own payment comes from. That is where their own payment comes from. So this is the export guideline in Nigeria, and in this guideline we discussed today, we have learned three things about document again. We have learned about the fact that NXP has a validity. We've learned about the fact that there is a domiciliary account that must be opened through which money must come in through. We have learned about the fact that the item that are exempted from inspection does not necessarily have to be prohibited. Does not necessarily have to be prohibited. The fact that it's exempted means it can be exported, only that there won't be any form of inspection done on it. So this is where we'll stop this morning on understanding export business documentation, part 4. In the evening, we'll be looking at part 5, and then we'll be discussing financial document in detail. We've talked about it before. And then we'll also be discussing transport document, and then probably we'll be able to look at commercial document before the end of the time allotted for the program. Thank you very much for listening again this morning. My name remains Dele Ayimibo. See you in the evening, and have a great day at work.